depends on peace, but peace depends on us.
Viewers, good morning. This morning, I want to address the issue of Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy. The legacy of His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya keeps on moving, keeps on going forward and forward. Since the handshake in 2018, that brought about the peace, the tranquility, the unity of purpose, President Uhuru's star has been rising. All over Africa, people are thinking of using the model that Kenya used to stop any form of violence, chaos on the streets after elections. As you know, all of you are aware that elections in Africa produce two things: after or before or after the voting. Disputed elections, winner takes it all, loser doesn't accept the results. But the Kenyan model takes us miles and miles away from the normal type of democracy. The democracy, a negotiated format, a consensus format. A democracy that gives consensus a chance. A democracy that talks about the future of a country, the unity of a country, as opposed to a fragmented country, polarized country, where most African countries find themselves in. We have seen in the last 10 years or so, most of the elections in Africa have been contested by the opposition. Very few people in Africa, countries in Africa, where opposition has conceded defeat and come up to congratulate the winner. We have seen the South African model has worked very well. The Ghanaian model has worked so well. I don't see any other country in Africa where the models have worked well. I thought it would be Sierra Leone, but today we see Sierra Leone going back to the same ethnic tensions, as you can see from the reports that are circulating in the international media and the local media. So elections in Africa are contentious issues. They create a contentious position, create a departing point for the people of Africa, of that particular nation. The legacy of Uhuru Kenyatta, therefore, will be remembered for having brought the tranquility that we have today, the peace, the new format, the new tool of having a better organized civil Africa, an Africa without violence, an Africa without chaos after elections, when the opposition accepts to work for the interests of a nation, not personal interests. This has worked in Kenya, and thank you very much, Your Excellency President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, for the tenacity and the steadfastness that you have guided this handshake up to today. For those who want to mutilate the handshake, belittle the handshake, one lesson they should learn is to look at Libya. Libya was once a territory we all respected. It is no more. Let's keep the handshake and the legacy of President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Thank you.
I gave a promise to the country that we were going to clear backlogs, which are in cases which are more than 5 years old. We had plans to continue tackling those cases of 5 years and above as we deal with the current ones. Then the budget cuts comes and we are ground to a halt.
I appreciate what CJ is saying. Yes, you need more money. But CJ, your courts are the same ones. When we propose certain tax measures, you are the first ones to say injunction. Hiyo isikuja. Sasa pesa hii itatoka wapi? Where will it come from? Hapana, that one, hiyo unconstitutional, hiyo itakuja review siku hiyo na hiyo. Alafu the same mouth nataka pesa. I ask myself, why is it that 99% of these cases are filed by one person? And you, as munampatia same day, hata hamgojei ati muambia kuja next week. Same day, chukua hii, funga hiyo, nafunga hiyo, nafunga hii, nafunga hii, nafunga hii.
I will be very honest and say, this is not about the judiciary. It is about a clique of judicial officers who have gotten into an unholy relationship with a clique of activist lawyers and oppositionist civil society people, with the intention of humiliating the government, stalling the government, embarrassing the government, and making it impossible for the government to perform. Our judiciary has got some of the finest people in the country. There is a clique in the judiciary that has been captured by a group of people in civil society and a clique of activist lawyers, and they are riding roughshod. Have you wondered, members of parliament, because you have the burden of leadership, have you wondered, in the last 3 years, one civil society activist in Kenya has obtained nearly 30 court orders, ex parte, 30 court orders, ex parte, from the court. He walks in, he gets an order, comes out. He walks in, he gets an order, comes out. In fact, he could even walk in today and say he wants an order so that all cabinet secretaries commit suicide. You'll get the order. He walks in, gets an order, comes out. What does that say about our judicial system?
I think it is a shame on our country that we prosecuted a case against drug traffickers in our country and we couldn't get a prosecution. And within a year of them being arraigned in the United States, they have been jailed for no less than 25 years. That is something that our judiciary should come to terms with. We all have a responsibility to make this country better. We all have a responsibility to make this country more efficient. We all have a responsibility to make this country more prosperous. We all have a responsibility to make this country fairer.
I want to call upon the people of Abazonia today, wherever you are in the diaspora in Abazonia itself, that in a struggle you are bound to have divisions. But divisions should not divert you from the main focus, the main challenge. We have struggled to expose the happenings, the human rights abuses in Abazonia. The army has killed hundreds and hundreds of thousands, burnt houses of people, internet was cut off, schools were closed, dispensaries, hospitals were burnt down. Abazonians should not be intimidated by Paul Robia. It is not upon the leaders of Abazonia, because I am not from Abazonia, but I've played a pivotal role in making sure that I loud out the voices, I put out the call, I call upon AU, EU, United Nations, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International. Many of them have listened to some of the things that I say here, and they have come at last. America, United States of America, is slowly moving towards giving the Amazonian people the dignity they deserve. I therefore call upon the leaders and the leadership of the Amazonian people to unite for a purpose. The unity of purpose is paramount as opposed to disunity, which has nothing but only produces ego that we have seen in South Sudan. What has killed South Sudan is not because they don't have the money, the minerals, the resources. Is ego between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. We would not like to see that ego come to the people of Amazonia, the leadership of Amazonia. I call upon Samuel Sako, Akanga, Milan, and Eko to unite and talk with one voice on international scene that will bring about the peace that since 1961, when the resolution 1608 was abandoned by the United Nations General Assembly and Amazonia was annexed by the Cameroon government by then. I call upon you, brothers, to pick up the unity call and free your people without disintegration. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and a very good afternoon to you. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you're watching us today across the world. We thank you so much for finding time. It is the 23rd of February, and it is another edition of Africa Showdown, where we get to look at issues that are trending or are of interest to Africa, and we get to look at them in detail. So thank you so much. So I will be joined by Dr. Matsanga through Skype. Dr. Matsanga, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Miriam. Good afternoon, wherever you are, viewers in the world. I'm just not on the station, on the desk together with Miriam, but I'm somewhere in the world where I can broadcast live. That is how powerful the digital platform television stations are. I will be linking through the satellite in Berlin and together joining Africa wherever you are listening to us live from where I am. I will be talking together with Miriam on issues that pertain Africa, that ail Africa, that destroys Africa, that makes Africa an unmanageable place. Yet we have plenty. We have plenty of everything. Thank you very much. Right from Amsterdam.
All right, Doctor. And of course, today we have so much to talk about. Of course, yesterday we saw South Sudan finally signing the peace deal, but that we'll talk about just after we finish with the Kenya stories. So let's look at the legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta, even as we look at the BBI. I don't know what you make of the BBI and the current, especially if, I don't know if you watched yesterday's meeting in Narok, and what do you make of that?
First of all, I want to make it very categorically clear that a redemption strategy means reconciliation, means truth-telling, means accountability, means restitution, reparation, and above all, healing. The BBI education, ethics, corruption, elections, national patriotism. But if you hijack it and take it to the root, it has 7 lanes. It has what we call constructional amendment. I am teaching today so that people can hear me wherever you are in the world. Constructional amendment of the Constitution creates a redemption. What went wrong can come right. What is right can be magnified to look good, to heal the wounds. But the route it is going now. In my articles today, I have written in the legacy trend, I have showed that if President Uhuru Kenyatta must come out and grab this, return it to the root, to the rail of healing, because it looks like people have used it or are using it as a vehicle to disrupt the current peace that we have. Both sides of the trend, both sides of the divide, those pro, those against, are now starting to preach disunity, fragmentation of the state of Kenya. That cannot be allowed. And we are not going to keep quiet about that. We must speak against it. We must tell the truth. For us who wanted a redemption strategy, especially me who has sung it 1,425 times. I've counted myself lucky for counting it, for saying it on national television. Redemption strategy, Kenya needs it. We must begin to talk out the truth, not to bring divisions among the tribes, to threaten the tribes, to threaten others, to stick, to pull out sentiments that are not worth sentiments of the current 21st century.
All right, and we've seen somebody like Deputy President, Mr. Dr. William Ruto, who, of course, has not been in support of this process. One time they're saying they want to support the BBI, the next minute they say they're not really interested, but it has been very difficult to place whether they want to support the BBI or not. But what our DP William Ruto, together with his team, have been very adamant about. They've been saying this BBI process has been hijacked and has been turned into a political rally. I don't know what you make of that.
But he is the one who has also created political hijack. Why hasn't he come out to say let's unite? Why is it him and Raila all the time piercing each other's ribs? What's the problem here? What's the problem? Time has come for Kenyans to speak out their mind, to speak up their minds. Because enough is enough. What has happened between the two is tearing the unity of purpose that we see, the unity of purpose that we got, the unity of purpose that President Uhuru Kenyatta wants to bring to Kenya. Therefore, the Deputy President and the Prime Minister must come out clearly and spell the terms of where they want to go, how they want to go, which destiny they want. Otherwise, the president must take all clearly. He is the sword holder. He holds the sword. The sword is his today. He must stand up, defend Kenyans. He must work, protect the integrity, the peace, the unity, the love for the people of Kenya. These daily briefs, daily disparaging people, these daily accusations, this talk of land. Land is a very emotive thing in Kenya. Not only in Kenya, but in Africa. Land has caused the people wars in Africa. And believe me or not, Miriam, if you are not careful, if we go on talking about this land, it will create us more problems. Let's focus on what makes Kenyans fight every day. If people were waiting for this, to ambush the BBI and take it to tribal cocoons, balkanization of a state, that is is not going to be. And what has happened, the words that were said last weekend, since Wednesday, they are not very good words, Miriam. They are not.
Mm-hmm. And even as we speak about, because at the end of the day, I think the purpose of the BBI was to unite Kenyans. That was the vision of President Uhuru Kenyatta together with Raila Odinga. The purpose of the BBI was to bring Kenyans together and ensure a cohesive Kenya. But from what we've seen, especially from yesterday's meeting and what you're saying from Wednesday, even on the Sunday Standard here, one of the key points here, they're saying that unity, ethnic nationalism emerges, threatening the unitary concept of the Kenyan state. So it appears, especially on this rally that happened, the BBI rally that happened yesterday in Narok, there has been some sense of ethnic nationalism that appears to arise. So people feel that this is an opportunity, that they want to air some things that they've been feeling are, injustice has been meted upon them. I don't know if a BBI will be the right forum to talk about these matters, or why these leaders dragging other matters that even threaten the purpose of the BBI, which is to unite Kenyans.
I think the whole thing has been hijacked, and let's face facts. The hijack is seen. The hijack can be seen. The hijack has taken a direction of politics than a direction of healing. The words that are being spewed are not words that are for healing. The words that are being sent out are dangerous words that can harm this nation called Kenya. Time has come now for the president, and I've emphasized the point. BBI is not a political process. The moment you take it as a political process, you will make errors. BBI is a healing process. It means the things that were injuring the community, the things that were creating chaos, things like elections, things like patriotism, the lack of patriotism, the lack of efforts, ethics, the lack of morality, the lack of too much corruption. We must be talking about the laws. What can we do to stop corruption? Stop corruption eating our resources in Kenya. These are the things that must be talked about. These are the things that people should now tell the wananchi to study. There is everything in Swahili. There is everything in English. Who can get a copy? We should educate the people of Kenya on what is supposed to be read, what is supposed to be taken, what is supposed to be seen, instead of having difficulties and many other things that are causing a very big problem in terms of, instead of having too many of these going out, each one telling his story, each one fomenting his story, accusations, labeling, bringing back the ghosts of 2008 and the ghosts of 2017. These ghosts are coming. These ghosts are resurrecting. These ghosts are being seen. And it is only people who are bad in heart, who have poverty of faith, who will not talk about this which is happening in our country. It is very sad, therefore, that we stand by the truth, we talk by the truth, we die by the truth. The destiny of this country depends on Kenya. Kenyans themselves standing up. The Kenyans themselves must stand up and tell these two leaders, the two leaders, especially the people, Raila Odinga and Dr. William Ruto, they should stop balkanizing Kenya. They should stop discussing things that are not in the BBI. They should stop engaging and allow their surrogates, offsprings of malcontents, who are spewing like Okina or Ladama, spewing that type of garbage. That is not leadership. That is adolescence. The stage of adolescence and the stupidity of that highest nature, destroying a nation. That is adolescence, degree of malcontents, toxins that can divide Africa, that can divide, is not allowed. They should turn out equally on this other side. the deputy president and his honchos, or the honchos of the deputy president, call them whoever, because he says he doesn't know anybody. Tomorrow when they make mistakes, he will say, I don't know them. But they are here on the platform. They are here on the platform insulting everybody, including insulting the president of the Republic of Kenya. These are some of the things that the deputy should condemn openly. If people are going to talk on the platform, microphone, we don't need to pembelesha watu. Switch off the microphone and then you sit down. Because you don't rallies to insult people. You don't go to a church. You have got to God's church, the Catholic church in Embu. You are busy talking about the gambling, which Jesus drove out of the church. No. No. This must stop. We are creating a state of red brigadism. If you have ever read, anybody listening to me who has read what the Red Brigade is in Italy, the year of lead, they created a state of despondency against Prime Minister Alda Moro. And then later on they came to kill him. We are watching. Some of us, peace lovers, are watching. Slowly. We are watching. They are for Africa. I might not be a Kenyan, but I'm watching for the sake of Kenyans. Millions who want peace. I stand for peace. I eat one meal because I'm looking for peace in Africa. I ate one meal until Riek Machar left South Africa. Today we shall come to it, and you are going to be very happy person that I started. You were there when I was interviewing Riek Machar. You are there when I was telling Zuma to release Riek Machar to go to Sudan. Haven't we got the peace? I eat one meal in order to make Africa better. I don't enjoy. I am here fighting for our continent to unite, to have peace, to have unity of purpose, not the unity of divisions, the divisions of balkanization of states, and making them very, very dangerous states. Africa does not need this. Kenya does not need this. Jameni, wa Kenya muamuke kabisa. Mtoke kwa hiyo usingizi. Watu wanaleta mafurugano kwa inyu tena. Wanaanza kuchochekana kwa mambo ya kuchochekaniza. Tuwache hiyo mafurugano. Raila Odinga na William Ruto wawache mafurugano. Mafurugano yao inaleta siasa mbaya, maisha mbaya. That is my position.
All right. And also we've seen the NCIC accuse politicians of using BBI to polarize Kenya. Doctor, there, as you have mentioned, so they're saying this is not very good for the country because this may end up, Kenyans might start really breeding some hatred in them. And, you know, there has been a bit of tension, but they will awaken some of these tensions that were there previously. So the NCIC has come out and accused politicians of using this BBI platform to polarize the country. So how would you, advise President Uhuru Kenyatta and his team and the people who are involved in spearheading this BBI report to handle these BBI, rallies moving forward and the manner in which they're engaging with the public?
Because it is not clear. Something has gone wrong. You need to put up your equipment properly. There's something that has just clicked on the satellite.
Yes.
That we are not picking each other properly.
All right.
Are you hearing me now?
Stephen is handling it. I think that in a moment you should be back. We apologize for that. But as Dr. Matanga there was saying, you can hear me now. We are back.
Yes, we are back.
So what I was saying is the NCIC has accused politicians of using this BBI to polarize Kenya, and they're saying if things continue like this, some old wounds and even a possible violence might break out. So I don't know how you would advise President Uhuru Kenyatta, together with the people that have been working in spearheading these BBI rallies, on how to handle this BBI matter, especially when they're in public and they're engaging with public for the sake of a united Kenya moving forward. How should they handle this BBI rally moving forward for the remaining rallies that are remaining?
First of all, this is a Sunday. In the Sunday, I believe in preaching. In the Sunday, I believe in quoting the Bible. The Bible says Jesus left Jericho, asked for a donkey, and said, "Go ye ahead, bring me a donkey." And when they asked who was looking for the donkey, say ye, my master wants the donkey. And the donkey to enter the kingdom, the house of God. That house of God is the house of the temple in Jerusalem. Time has come for President Uhuru Kenyatta to get his whip and enter this temple. This use the sword that he was given in power to sweep, to chase away the thieves, the gamblers, the fake firearms dealers, all these type of people, chase them out of the Jerusalem. Your Excellency, most of us walk the winds, the oceans, the seas of this country, the seas of this world. Help. Everywhere I step, I help Kenya. Everywhere I step, I talk Kenya. Everywhere I talk Africa. I am on this because of him. Let him get the whip and whip these guys out. They have outlived their usefulness. I'm telling you, if salt becomes saltless, salt is not salt anymore. There is no more salt in some people. Talk it out. There is no more salt. If they don't want to help the president to have a united Kenya with a legacy, their salt is finished. Take them out. What is the use of having people who pretend to be friends while they are double dealing and undermining the entire system? What is it that you want, ye president? Do they want to turn Kenya into Italy? The year of lead. You remember the Red Brigades? Yes, I'm an expert on those things. I've read them. Anybody who wants to challenge me, I went to school when they were still collecting firewood. I am here to stand and tell the truth that they want to turn this country into the country of Red Brigades. That is not what Kenyans want. Kenyans want peace. They want unity. They want progress. They want a united country. And that's what President Uhuru Kenyatta is advocating for. Less than that, Mr. President, the only advice left, get the whip, get on the donkey, sweep the thieves, sweep the gamblers out of your house. Otherwise, the way we are going, we might be going Riek Machar and Salva Kiir style. Remember, things in Sudan started that way with ego. Remember, the things in Sudan started in the ego. The ego took place in Sudan, and this is what we had. As a journalist, an investigative journalist, I have no words to spare for any lumpens in lumpen proletariat who create chaos and conflicts, money launderers, those who are engaged in mafia acts, destroying Africa. I have no good words for them. I'm sorry. That is what I am. And it is a Sunday. Take the step, Mr. President. Take the step, one step. There is nowhere in the Bible that they have read and said Jesus entered the temple with disciples. Leave the people. The sword was not broken into two pieces. The sword was given to one. And if that sword is not utilized to keep the Africans to the Amsterdam and these places and the Hague and so on, that is your problem. The problem lies squarely and the solution lies squarely with His Excellency the President. Thank you.
All right, and also something else, Doctor, that emerged here, and I see it has been captured here on this Sunday Standard. Just a few of emerging issues, and that is one of them is history, and they're feeling that unresolved land issues return to haunt building bridges initiative as regions speak out, and that was very apparent in Narok. But also something also very important: groups express contrasting preferences of the structure of government, and as well as positions. Lack of clarity on nature of positions to be formed triggers divisions at the top. So when they keep talking about position, because we see the new positions that the BBI will create, or we've seen even the leaders who were speaking yesterday, the increasing of positions or just positions in general, it appears to just take away the rest of the matters that are important that Kenyans should be listening to. So now Kenyans might start wondering, is this BBI a way of forming more positions, as some politicians have been saying? So why would we want to vote for something that will create more positions? Because you've seen politicians just turn into something and one of their issues is for BBI to create more positions. So how can they steer clear of these, conversations that are not really at the core of what BBI really was intended to achieve?
First of all, there is what I call in constitutional, during my study at the campus about 26 years ago. It's a very long time when people were not born, 26 to 27 years ago. I remember what we call constructive amendment of the Constitution. Constructive amendment, constructional amendment of the Constitution, which is one leg of the BBI. Finally, the BBI will sit down to construct the Constitution afresh, lead to the root, to seal the loopholes that had caused you agony, anger, anguish, and pain. I hope those words are very clear. I've been all the time singing them together with you. Yes. Anger, anguish, agony, and pain. Mm-hmm. Those are the words that have created Kenya, what we are today. From 1992, Kenya has been heaping anger, accrued like a rent arrears. If you don't pay this rent this year, it accumulates. Mm-hmm. So Kenya needs to wash out its anger through the BBI. By readjusting, by constructing a new framework of the constitutional route. That is one. If that constitutional route increases the slots that can manage anger, so be it. It's up to Kenyans. If that slot can seal agony, if that slot can seal marginalization, if that slot can bring inclusivity, right? Mm-hmm. That is what people want. So there is nothing wrong with expansion. Expansion could come as a remedy to the solutions, to the chaos that Kenya has had. Mm-hmm. Two, Kenya East or West, and I'm lecturing today. Kenya East or West, whether you go to North, whether you go to Sun, whether you go to Mars, whether you go to Plateau, whether you go to Venice, if you don't do your elections, if you don't change the mechanisms, if you don't arrange your electoral systems to reflect a national focus, let's meet near hell. Let's meet near hell or heaven. That's the truth. I see some elections in Kenya create chaos. Every day, every morning, people sharpening their tongues now. It's because of elections. Mm-hmm. Ruto is sharpening his tongue because of election of 2022. Raila is sharpening his tongue with his people. Adama is sharpening his tongue. He wants to become the governor of Narok. Another one is because of elections. All these people who are sharpening their tongues because elections, look at African issue. Look at South African elections. They voted tonight. Tomorrow they have gone to work. They just hear the results while they are working in their offices. In Britain, that one happened. In Britain, it happens. The British voted today. Even in Britain, the day of election is taken like any other day. The buses are moving. People vote by postal order. Change your election. Then change your mechanism of how Kenyans can vote. The biggest mistake that people who did the Kenyan constitution have done, and I want to say it, Miriam, so that your viewers can be engaged on another subject. The biggest mistake that the Kenyans did in the constitution is to bring a very wrong judiciary, a very bad judiciary, a rogue judiciary headed by Maraka, a rogue judge, Chief Justice, Muyaye kabisa kubwa, incompetent. You'll ask a Muganda what a Muyaye means. A Muyaye means a rogue Chief Justice who cannot man a judiciary. You can see the things happening in the justice system. Even the judges writing letters to suspects, wanting to sleep with suspects. What a shame. What a shame. These are the things I told you. Didn't I tell you? I told you. And the people were laughing at me. I told you Maraga cannot manage. So that Kenyans focus. This BBI should focus on how to change the regulations on how a president can pick a judge, a Supreme Court judge. The president should have the powers to speak, bring somebody who will help him to run the government, not someone who will help him to oppose the government. Like the United States of America. The other mistake that Kenya has done is to mix hybrid. You have done a parliamentary and a presidential type of governance. Do you notice that whenever you talk about the presidential elections, is where pangas come out, machete come out. But do people fight on MP? No. Are people fighting because of MP? No. Why? Because it is the highest slot. Why don't we make it a slot which is just won by the highest party? The highest party takes the elections. The highest party wins the government, forms the government. The second to it becomes the leader of opposition. In simple terms, msiende mbali na membo ya kusema mna mix sijui prime minister sijui ni hapana. In doing so, you are going to remove the political parties. You are going to bring back the political party ideology, because everybody will work hard in the party to make sure that the party is electable. You are removing, you are eroding political competition in the parties. You are awarding certificates to your cronies in the parties. You know all these parties in Kenya award certificates to their cronies. If I don't want you, I don't give you the certificate to go to parliament. So in doing so, if you remove this and bring a mechanism, believe me or not, Miriam, Kurigira said the same. Matsanga will say the same. Another professor will say the same. 7 of them, 2 million will say the same. The biggest problem of Kenya are elections.
All right. And okay. And Doctor, you mentioned that part of judiciary and this judge who is now facing charges on being an accessory to murder because of trying to help the widow who is also accused of the late Cohen. I think Kenyans were really shocked watching that news yesterday from the other day, and it has been continuing. And I see it here on the Sunday Nation in regards to judiciary and the corruption that, Doctor, you've been talking talking about so much here on some judges who are really corrupt and are working to defeat the same purpose that they took the oath of office for, to protect and to uphold the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya and help in interpreting this Constitution. But unfortunately, they are the ones who are working to defeat the same Constitution that they swore to, defend. So, Court of Appeal judge who communicated with Kiss, a murder suspect, to answer to charges next week. I don't know, is this a true representation, Doctor, of our judiciary today?
Yes. Let's not even go further. We need to run to South Sudan. Yes. It's a true presentation. I told you there was a judge there who had a Range Rover, and she's still there, who had a Range Rover bought by a man who bought 8 houses, who bought cars of a range, and that man bought a Range Rover for the judge. The judge is still there. Transfer, reading some other section of case. This is not there. Ask me, even if I'm going to the hell and I'm seated in a waiting room, because there's a waiting room before the fire is come, you are sent to fire. I'll tell you there is a judge there. These judges have been doing this for a long time. When we discovered that Range Rover, the judge warned us. You remember she warned us that if I see anybody writing on social media about this case, I defied it and I wrote. The following morning when we went, we found it. Who has been getting money from the Akasha? She's still in court. That woman, Chebukony from Mombasa, what is she doing in court? She has been adversely mentioned. She should quit. She should leave the court. She should just go home before she's dragged out to the U.S. She has problems to answer in the U.S. What type of life is this that Kenyans are seeing scandal by scandal? We shall prove. There's a song coming in, scandal by scandal, scandal by scandal, scandal. Every morning you wear scandal by scandal. The DP scandal by scandal. The DP is a man in the paper, scandal by scandal. Why is it that bad luck follows only one person? What? Why? Because there is something wrong, Jamen.
And I think maybe we should take a short break so that they can fix the connection. We see our viewers are not able to receive us very well. I've seen a few of them complain here about the on and off. So maybe we take a very short break, and then when we come back, I think you mentioned scandal after scandal, and we see it on the Sunday Nation here. The headline is "Man Under Siege," and he styles himself as a hustler who is fighting political dynasties, but his path is littered with political mistakes and an unhelpful circle of political allies. And he cast his gaze far and wide. Is William Ruto ignoring the small distractions, nibbling away at his reputation? So Sunday Nation seems to be having that story and the problems of people that are attached, or seems to be allies of Deputy President, who are forever being mentioned from one scandal to the next. And now, of course, the biggest scandal we have, Doctor, which we'll talk about when we come back, the arms scandal, is also his office is at the center of it. So please don't go too far. We want to fix our connection, and then we shall be right back.
In many parts of Africa, there is always a struggle for power. Struggles for power begin from the struggles for internal democratization of our parties or units where we belong when we come to power. The politics of compensational structure, the politics of deficit, the beginning from a deficit, that I had a deficit. I had a deficit before I was born, or when I was born. I found myself in a poor family. It's the politics of compensation that haunts Africa today. Many people want to take on leadership, but it's the leadership as a basis of where you came from, or the leadership has qualities.
My father bought me my first shoe in 1981 from a Mr. Onyango on the street for 60 shillings because he could not afford the butter shoes. Why am I saying this? Today, as you can see, the gentleman who did not have shoes is sitting at the high table. With the son of the founding father.
Sasa kama nitaambiwa naongea siasa, lakini I'm not, I promise. I have no such intention. But, you know, when you hear people out there, you know, they talk, oh, huyu mtu fulani, dynasty hii, sijui dynasty hii. It's not about that. Leadership is not about where you were born. It's not about where you came from. It's not about the color of your skin. It is not about your tribe. It is just about a desire to serve, a desire to do good, a desire to make a difference in the lives of people. And anybody can do that.
For a leader to be a leader, he must have qualities. Identify himself with qualities of good behavior, qualities of no corruption, qualities of no hatred, qualities of engagement, discussion with others, collective responsibility, listening to the people. These are the qualities. A leader who delivers does not need to have a background. A leader who delivers can deliver without a background of the rich or the poor. Many people in Africa seem to be misinterpreting that once you are born, you directed God to produce you in a particular family. None of us would have been where we are had we actually had a message from God where we would be born. I therefore look at this as compensational politics. Meritocracy is the answer. Meritocracy gives you the position that you yearn for. Meritocracy delivers you a position. Meritocracy gives you what you are doing for the people of Kenya or Uganda or whatever country where you are in Africa. But if you don't have these qualities, even if you are born from a family that had the whole world as theirs, then you cannot be a leader. It is therefore very important that the leaders who yearn to become leaders in Africa stop the usage of compensational politics. The politics that you want to compensate on others simply because you were poor, simply because you didn't go to a good school, simply because you don't drink in the same place where they drink, simply because you don't eat in that restaurant, simply because you don't have cars. That politics has got syndromes, traits of people who are either corrupt or have hatred or have a problem on itself. I therefore call upon you people to re-examine as Africans that wherever you come from, the background you come from, you are an African. You can deliver something for your country. You don't need to be able, you don't need to come to compensate for the lost past, because with such attitude, you will grab everything and your country will collapse. Thank you very much for listening.
launching the BBI Task Force report. Makofi.
Your Excellency, I am very happy that the document, the recommendations and the proposals that have been put forward informs us on how to build institutions to get our politics away from personalities and ethnicities to institutions that will carry all of us irrespective of who we are, where we come from, the language we speak, or the political party we subscribe to.
Kusema ya kwamba pesa mingi ije mashinani, tunaunga mkono. Ipelekwe mpaka ifike kama kuanzia 35% kuelekea juu. Hiyo pesa itumike kwa mambo ya maendeleo, not for consumption. Recurrent expenditure should not be above 30%. 70% should go for development.
Ni kwa nini baada ya kila miaka mitano tunaenda miaka mitatu ya kazi, miaka ya 2 tunapoteza kwa sababu siasa imechacha? Tunataka tuulize wafanyabiashara wetu wenzetu, ni nini inawazuia? Ni nini tuwaweza kufanya ndio tuhakikishe ya kwamba biashara zenu hazisimami? We must have development plans that are 20 years plus if we are to resolve our problems, my brothers and sisters. Tunataka tuwapatie assurance ya kwamba wanaweza kupatia wananchi mikopo ya miaka 10, miaka 15, kwa sababu they have confidence ya kwamba Kenya will be stable and Kenya will always have leadership, whoever it is.
We must give ourselves a different political template if we are truly to prosper and not be dragged down every single day by never-ending squabbles. Every so often, I believe, a nation must come together. We in Kenya have done so in Lancaster in the 1960s, leading to the Lancaster Consensus. We did so in the 80s, leading to the removal of Section 2A. We also did the same in 2008. And I believe it is time now also for a new consensus. And this is the aim and objective of the BBI process. In this process of renegotiation, no voice will be wrong, and all must be heard. The process must be inclusive, and it should spell, fellow Kenyans, an end of ethnic majoritarianism, and I believe an end to the winner-take-all politics. Fellow Kenyans, we are on a path, I believe, to end the cycle of election crises, and that is the only way we can win our battle of economic prosperity. Sure, all Kenyans, for me, I am not against any single person, but I am for 47 million Kenyans to take the next step forward.
From 1992 in Kenya, elections have always been divisive in the form of violence, in the form of malpractices, in the form of all types of gerrymandering that has led to chaos that we have seen that has engulfed this country since independence. The biggest obstacle of the Kenyan elections is a very simple way out. The obstacle is we have never changed the forest we have changed monkeys in the forest. If you want to cure the Kenya elections, you get a cure, a permanent cure for the Kenya elections, change the forest. The monkeys will not come to that new forest. Reforms have been done around the Kenyan elections. Rules, regulations, laws. Are these laws enforced anyway? The answer is no. Most of the people break it, go with it, create chaos after they have not been punished. So the basis of the BBI is to interrogate the chapter, the seriousness of why elections produce violence every 5 years. Why do people fight? Yes, someone would say they are linked with tribal cocoons that conduct themselves or take part in the elections. The answer could be clearer, nearer there. But the solution, therefore, to safeguard, even if it is tribal. South Africa has got the biggest tribe, the Zulu. But still there are safeguards in South Africa that have safeguarded an election. That the Zulus don't dominate the entire South Africa because the electoral systems are safeguarded by principles and institutions. The institution of elections in Kenya and in many African countries has always been the product and has always been an institution that produces violence. Everywhere on the continent, you see electoral commissioners confused in reading their election results. Some of them don't even know the results. Some of them don't know how many votes were garnered by both parties. To avoid this mess, Kenya needs to look completely and put emphasis on the electoral reforms that are needed so that in 2022 there is no violence in the elections that will be conducted. For this reason, therefore, I would urge the chairman of the Electoral Commission, Mr. Chebukati, to say bye-bye, because he has held several controversial elections that we have seen, including under his auspices, one election nullified in the history of Africa. Thank you very much, viewers.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. In the first hour of the show, we were looking at some news from Kenya, some issues that we were discussing together with Dr. Matanga, who is joining us through Skype, and we looked at President Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy, the BBI, and the violent speeches that we are seeing that, if not really checked, might take this country to some path we do not want to see go. So right now, we are in the second hour of the show, and I think that this is something, Doctor, I've been really looking forward to come here today and speak to you about this. South Sudan peace. Dr. Riek Machar yesterday was sworn in as the first vice president, sealing a deal aimed at ending 6 years of civil war. Are we beginning to see now, or is this the beginning of a new South Sudan?
Yes. Thank you very much, Miriam. I'm sorry for the hiccup. But it won't happen. We shall link up. We need more strong equipment to link up to the satellite systems. We shall sort out that problem when we cross over the bridge. Thank you very much. First, what I've been waiting for in South Sudan has happened. Prayed, I've talked hours and hours on that television station of ours. We have actually finally in getting South Sudan working. It is working today, and I hope the peace will hold. I pray the peace will hold. I pray that the people, the implementation authority of IGAD moves in to make sure that we don't reverse any gains, that we go. The issue of accountability still stands and can be corrected now, that there is need for accountability, there is need for looking at can heal the wounds of the war. If that is not done quickly, some other forces could crop in and disrupt the peace that we have. Agile peace accord that must be slowly, gradually be guarded against any infiltration side elements that can bring chaos and disrupt the peace that we have.
All right. And also there's another matter, of course, that has been so much into play, and that is ethnicity in South Sudan. And as much as there are other issues that has really brought the country to where it was in terms of the war that lasted that long, ethnicity played a significant role in this because, the Dinka and the Nuer especially of President Salva Kiir and his deputy or the opposition leader, Mr. Riek Machar, it has been very tribal and very ethnified in that manner. And we saw other ethnical, groups coming in and backing one of the two top, tribes there in South Sudan. How can they try to foster? I know BBI in Kenya really looks forward to, or the intention of the BBI is to try and solve this problem that normally surrounds our ethnical backgrounds that some politicians use to pit Kenyans against each other. So in South Sudan's context, how can they address this matter of negative ethnicity?
First of all, I just want to say that South Sudan needs restorative justice. It doesn't retributive justice. Because if you introduce retributive justice, at the moment, there will be chaos. Let's go for alternative means of justice, restorative, the understanding of the communal setup of South Sudan, the restoration of the old, the customary ways of resolving conflicts, restoration of communities, reparations that are needed. We go faster and do alternative mechanisms of resolving all these conflicts. The Kachacha and type of restorative method in Rwanda. You remember the Hutu and the Tutsi, the two men in Rwanda could not see eye to eye. Kagame did what we call restorative justice. Today, Rwanda is, as you see, there is no killing, there is no hatred, there is no what. People have come back to terms and they said, we move together as one nation. Therefore, South Sudan needs restorative, not retributive justice.
All right, and also there's no mistake. Of course, these two leaders were really coerced into coming together. The pressure from the international community, the U.S., also IGAD. I think last minute, a few weeks ago, even IGAD came out and said, no, we do not have any more money to continue, sponsoring this peace process. So if you don't agree, then that is on you. And also we saw United States coming out and saying they were fed up. So it is the pressure from these international communities that culminated into these leaders coming together and signing of the peace deal that will eventually now has resulted into a unity government, and they're working on the structures and how they can fully come together. I don't know. Are you hopeful that perhaps these leaders have learned something in this whole process? Or now, will they expect the international community, IGAD, the EU, the Troika, and all that, to be coming in and giving them pressure all the time? Or have they learned something? And is it time now they started acting as leaders and be the leaders that the people of South Sudan requires them to be? And perhaps learn some conflict resolution mechanisms that will not require people coming in and mediating all the time in South Sudan?
I think what you have said is 100% correct. They were coerced. The country where I'm speaking from now is the one. Now, can I take this opportunity to announce country that had those documents was Netherlands. They were prepared to take these guys from, And I think those most Sudanese were seeing, because you can see what's on the platform there. I cannot see what the comments are.
All right, we seem to be having a problem
Some
there.
of us who are friends told him, I think in a nutshell, you can continue with, I have done my best.
All right. We seem to be having a problem there with the connection there.
The people of Africa,
Yes, we seem to be having a problem with the connection. I don't know if it's on your part or ours, but I think production is working on that. So let's just, see if we can just continue with this conversation. Sorry about that. And of course, South Sudan. Of course, yesterday, former South Sudanese rebel leader, Mr. Riek Machar, was sworn in as the first vice president, sealing a peace deal aimed at ending 6 years of civil war. President Salva Kiir witnessed the moment at a ceremony at the State House in the capital, Juba. And it is hoped that the new unity government will bring an end to the conflict that has killed about 400,000 people and displaced millions. And even as we were speaking there with Dr. Matsanga, which I really apologize, I really wanted to get his thoughts on this, because this is something that we've been speaking about time and time again, the matter of South Sudan, and the intricacies and the issues that were surrounding even this peace process, that at some point the hopes had become very thin, but after mounted pressure from the international community, President Salva Kiir and Riek Machar were coerced into signing this peace deal, and also into now moving forward, forming the unity government. And as I was asking Dr. Matanga there, because from what we see, this did not come, this peace deal was not signed voluntarily. I think there was a lot of coercing. There was a lot of pressure from the international community. We saw Mr. Nagy, who is the United States, Secretary of State Assistant in the African Affairs, Tibor Nagy, who came out and said, our international community is fed up. The people who are helping South Sudan is fed up, and so the leaders must now make up their mind and decide what they really want to do and fix the country. And also IGAD came out and said they did not have enough resources to keep funding this peace process of South Sudan. So what they did is now they threw the ball into Salva Kiir's court, and it was no longer on IGAD's term. So the US, of course, as I said, their assistant, let me just explain the peace process, the way it was, and the negotiations process that brought South Sudan to what it is today. And yesterday, after the signing of the peace process there, after President Salva Kiir about a week ago came out and announced that in a very surprise move, personally did not expect that, when he came out and he announced that he was willing and ready to reduce the number of states, and also went ahead and added 3 more administrative areas that was contentious for the other side of the aisle. But later on, they seemed to have agreed because, even the other players from outside told Riek Machar, President Salva Kiir has compromised on this one. So can you now come and compromise on the 3 states areas? But it's not very clear how that matter sits with Riek Machar, if it is among the issues that now will be discussed after they have signed the peace deal, or he totally accepted that. It is not very clear, because what we know, his first stand was that he was not in agreement with that. And so So when the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of African Affairs, Tibor Nagy, had a clear brief when he arrived in Addis Ababa on February 7 during the 33rd summit of the African Union. So he came there purposely to ensure that he speaks with South Sudan's President Salva Kiir together with his former deputy Riek Machar, who now is back as the deputy president, so that they can agree on forming a unity government. And so he found very frustrated negotiators. Remember, the last mediation team that we had there, that was led by South Africa's Vice President Mr. David Mabuza, that didn't seem to be making a lot of progress because the hardlining positions of the different stakeholders that were involved became was negating every gain that had been made so far. And so when Tibor Nagy arrived that day in Addis Ababa for the AU summit, he found a very frustrated team who had been really trying to see that these people come together, and it has been futile at that point. So there were efforts to bring the two together, but in a parallel with so during that meeting, that also was the purpose, even as the AU summit was continuing to meet with these two leaders, so that they could help and push them to meet the 22nd of February deadline to form a transitional government of national unity. Because the deadline was fast approaching, and so as South Sudan finally forms the government of national unity, which was formed yesterday, diplomats familiar with the lengthy negotiations have recounted to the East African newspaper that is part of the Standard, the Nation here, and they said they were just giving the account on how this process was, and the maneuvers that were employed to reconcile these two teams. And on that evening, gathered in one of the AU meeting halls, Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni, remember, on the 7th of February during the AU meeting in Addis Ababa. So President Yoweri Museveni, together with Sudan's Prime Minister Hamdok, they met in quite a lengthy discussion, and they were having there was some tension in those discussions. I don't understand why. Maybe perhaps they had different ways in which they thought they could advise these leaders to come together and save South Sudan, essentially. But even that meeting failed to bear any fruits, and so the two were known as the co-guarantors, and that's why they had to meet and discuss this matter and try to bring these two together. President Yoweri Museveni of Uganda and Sudan Prime Minister Mr. Abdallah Hamdok. And so because they were the co-guarantors who were mediating on behalf of IGAD and meant to safeguard the 2018 peace deal. So at this point, Dr. Machar, who had earlier insisted on having a South Sudan divided into the old colonial districts of 23 administrative states, agreed to revert to 10 states. And the number that the country had at independence in 2011, President Kiir, on the other hand, refused to budge, insisting on either 32 states or more because the people wanted. President Salva Kiir, that was the only explanation he had on why he wanted to keep the 32 states. He said because the people wanted those states. So an IGAD communique issued in the wake of stalemate showed the bloc had agreed to pass the ball back to President Salva Kiir to go consult with his people, which I think he did, especially after he came from Kenya. Remember that time he came from attending the national prayers for our late President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. On arrival to Juba, there was a huge number of his supporters waiting. So that was his way of consulting with the people and to report back to IGAD last Saturday. In a way, IGAD was washing its hand off the issue, and President Kiir was now firmly in the spotlight, so he could not budge, because when he insisted, he said the people are the ones who are insisting. They want the 32 states. So IGAD told him, okay, fine, you go consult with the people and then come tell us what the people want. And if at all the people have changed their mind. So basically, IGAD, got itself out of the way and said, now the matter squarely lies with you, President Salva Kiir. So on that, he could not. There's no way. I mean, it was just lying squarely, with him. So in public, Mr. Nagy said donors would not accept leaders who do not choose compromise, and IGAD warned it will no longer sponsor an extension of the talks. So the discussion turned into incentives, and if President Salva Kiir and Riek Machar formed a government, then they could be helped to the formal establishment of governing structures and financial support. The problem, though, another diplomat argued, who was also part of these negotiations, that was President Kiir's insistence on the 32 states to avoid antagonizing his support base. And we saw, even after he came out to announce, there was a fallout within his very close allies who were in strong support of the 32 states. And so that is something that also must be addressed and must be looked into. And when finally President Salva Kiir made a turnaround overnight, he managed to tell the losing governors that the situation would only be temporary and that more states would be established to accommodate them. See, now this is another problem, because this governors, remember, he fired all the 32 governors because as a move to show that he was committed to his new pronouncement that South Sudan would return to 10 states. So he fired. But now he came out, on the other hand, he fired them and said the country is coming back to 10 states. And on the other hand, trying to appease them, he came out and said that they should not worry, more states will be created. So I don't know if that is what really made him create these 3 administrative areas. And should he have said this, which he did, he's on record saying that more states will be created. And then I don't think he meant it, because if he signed this peace deal that South Sudan now has reverted to 10 states, as it were, when they got their independence, I don't think there's too much at stake now. He cannot go back and try creating more states, because he can see whatever he tried when he tried doing this in the first place, what this led South Sudan, and this is what caused a lot of trouble in South Sudan. Remember, the first when they inherited when South Sudan became a country, it had 10 states. Then President Salva Kiir made a decree to 28 states, and then later on expanded it to 32 states, which apparently goes against the constitution of South Sudan. So if he even attempts to do this again in order to appease some of his allies, then this I hope this is not something he's hoping to follow through. But then if he doesn't, and these are very people who are very close allies to him, and who are expecting for him to honor this promise, so that what will that mean for President Salva Kiir? Are we likely to see an increase in other militant activities, or other parties being formed, or other rebels being formed, because they feel as though they're not fully represented, they're not fully a part of, in agreement with the current constitution of the government? So this also now poses and raises other important issues that perhaps because of the bigger picture which was to make sure that they meet the deadline. Now this brings up other issues that perhaps were ignored even after now the unity government has been formed, and as Mr. Salva Kiir took his position as Riek Machar, took his position as the first vice president of the Republic of South Sudan. What now, or how will President Salva Kiir now address these other matters of the people who are very close to him and who now might threaten the peace and security of South Sudan? So could So let me just read a part of that. So when President Salva Kiir finally made an overnight turnabout, he managed to tell the losing governors, remember the ones he fired, there were 32 of them, he fired them. And then now I think there will be 10 of them will be constituted, will be appointed, and the situation would only be temporary, and that more states would be established to accommodate them. That is what President Salva Kiir told these governors that were fired. Still, some senior officials in the SPLM defected to South Sudan United Front, a rebel movement led by former military chief Paul Malong, who has not yet signed the peace agreement. I thought that when they came from Vatican, one of the things that they promised is that they will try reaching out to other people who are also very vital in terms of the peace process in South Sudan, but were left out, in 2018 during the signing of that peace agreement. But from what I see here, Malong was not even has not signed this peace deal. So this also forms another security challenge there for President Salva Kiir and the leadership there of South Sudan. So on Friday, Mr. James P. Morgan, South Sudan's ambassador to African Union, denied reports that pressure had been applied. Of course, we know pressure had been applied to President Salva Kiir and Riek Machar. If pressure was not applied, then South Sudan, could not be where it is today, and the formation of the unity government yesterday would not have taken place. Of course, the signing of the peace deal now, they're working on the modalities and the structures in which they'll have everybody's interest included when it comes to appointment of state jobs or things like that. So that will culminate to the formation of the unity government and also the unifying of the forces from the different sides. They can come together and now be a united, force for South Sudan. So that is also something that is yet to be done. So there is also one thing, and I think when I was speaking to Dr. Matanga before, our signals became not very good and they were interrupted. And I asked him, because one of the key things that have been fueling the war in South Sudan is ethnicity, and we have to look at it. And the tragedy of South Sudan is that the same forces that helped it to find its independence also set it up for a civil war or for conflict from where it sits today. So the people in South Sudan spent decades fighting for autonomy from the north. This led them to organize themselves by their tribe or ethnicity. Since they had no national identity to align with, it also led them to form militias. And we see the militias that are tribal based are still very vibrant in South Sudan. And so we see, of course, Dinka being the tribe with the most people, and followed by Nuer in terms of population, and they're both rival. They're pastoralist groups, so there has been some rivalry like that. But also, this was felt because President Salva Kiir is Dinka and Mr. Dr. Riek Machar is Nuer. So because of what happened in Juba 1 in 2013, the war and the tension between these two leaders really went down to their supporters, and it took a very tribal lining. And so that is something that people now, South Sudanese leadership, must start looking for ways that South Sudan can come back together, can unite regardless of the ethnicity or the tribal alienation, because this is something that cannot be isolated, because this is one of the things that fueled this war and this crisis in South Sudan, because people were taking sides in regards to which ethnicity group they come from. So these clashes have usually, normally even before the 2013, they were taking place in local context, because as I said, they're pastoralists. So every now and then there's, rivalry when it comes to maybe natural resources and things like that. But without causing massive amounts of, fatalities. However, this changed, as I said earlier, there in 2013, after the dismissal of the former vice president, who is also now the Vice President, Mr. Riek Machar and Nuer, and by South Sudanese President Salva Kiir, who is a Dinka, functioned as a catalyst for mass violence, claiming more than thousands of lives since then. So that is something that South Sudan has to look at and must look at, the ethnicity and composition, and how the leaders there have used their ethnicity to just propagate negativity and to disunite their people. So that is something that has to be solved. And also, I think congratulations to the leaders there in South Sudan, but there are things that still needs to be solved, and we shall continue looking and talking about this matter as we have always done here. Remember, 400,000 lives have so far been lost since 2013. There are people who are sitting there waiting for justice. There are people who are sitting there waiting for their lands to be returned. I hear the others whose land was also taken. I hear the others who, and there are people who have been migrated to, have been reduced to a refugee status, even in South Sudan itself and in other African countries. In Kenya here, we have so many of them, in Uganda and elsewhere. So these are people who would feel, I have nothing to do with, with the power struggle. Why do I have to suffer? So these are wounds that must heal. These are people who are waiting for justice one way or the other. So now South Sudan faces the delicate, matter of trying to unite the people of South Sudan, at the same time trying to bring justice and accountability. And that is the only way towards a true healing there in South Sudan. And so we're waiting to see how they're going to deal with this matter. And as I said earlier there, ethnicity is one thing that they have to remove, all their hate or their prejudice. They have to look at it very, very clearly and see how can we solve this matter, because it's not such a small matter. And right now, South Sudanese are divided more than ever because of the war that has waged them against each other in regards to ethnicity and, of course, other matters that now formed the part of why South Sudan was in crisis. So this is something that must be and should be addressed. So let's just wait and see how that will play out. So we go to our next topic, which is Cameroon. Is it the end of Paul Biya? He is under pressure from France. Now, French President Emmanuel Macron has revealed he pressured Cameroon's President Paul Biya to release his opposition rival Maurice Kamto from jail. Now, Kamto and some of his supporters had spent over 8 months in jail when Paul Biya ordered for their release in early October after the major national dialogue. I don't know why they keep calling this a national dialogue. It was not a national dialogue. The issues there that were being discussed had nothing to do with finding solution between Paul Biya's government with the Anglophone crisis there. It had nothing to do. Paul Biya's government came very clear with their own points that they wanted to address, and they did that in the name of national dialogue, and they packed and they went. So I don't know how they're implementing whatever it is that the preconceived, agenda that they came with, and they were not open to listening to other people and what they had to say. So I don't know why they keep calling this a national dialogue while the government was just talking by itself, and the people who were supposed to be heard were not really heard at that day. The Anglophones who could have sat on that table and represented the feelings and the interests of the Anglophone people were not present. Matter of fact, they were handed a life sentence just a few weeks after to the national dialogue. And so I don't know. It's the dialogue was held in very unfair way, because the Anglophone leaders who have been the ones agitating for change, to have a referendum, to be free, these are the leaders who are supposed to come to the table so that President Paul Biya's side can have a very honest and open dialogue and perhaps find out why do you want to leave Cameroon? What is the problem? How can we change? Or if at all, and if should you secede, what will be the mechanisms, But this was not part of it. And whatever that was discussed there really did not meet the expectation of the Anglophone. But now we see French President Emmanuel Macron coming out. And remember, the opposition leader had been in prison, Mr. Maurice Kamto, and was released just a day after the dialogue ended. So he did not even get to participate in that dialogue that happened there, the so-called national dialogue. So Kamto was released. So now Paul Biya comes out. Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, came out and said, because he was being confronted by, I think, a reporter, an activist there for the Anglophone in France, and he said, it's actually through me that Mr. Maurice Kamto got to leave jail. But Maurice Kamto left jail after the national dialogue, and the things that he was agitating to change have not been changed. The stolen election still remains the same, and President, Paul Biya now has just served over just 2 years, slightly over 2 years of his 7-year term that he was elected in 2018. So how has this changed the important issues in Cameroon by President Emmanuel Macron? I think he would have gone way further and looked at other matters. Why is France is very standoffish when it comes to the matters there, especially the touches on Anglophone. You can see they really tread very carefully. And for Mr. Macron to say that he's the one who encouraged or pressurized President Paul Biya to remove Maurice Kamto. Does he not know of the innocent Anglophones and the innocent Anglophone leaders who have been jailed arbitrarily? Is it not aware of the protest that was happening last year in different jails there in Cameroon because of the Anglophones and the people who feel they have been jailed for no reason at all? You were arrested, you've been in jail for over a year, over 2 years, and you've not been tried, you've not been found with any offense, but you're still in jail. Does he not know, the state of Paul Biya's government, or because Maurice Kamto anyway is the opposition in the francophone part of Cameroon, and I think even his lawyers really they really sought for the help of Emmanuel Macron. But I'm thinking that is not the solution. That is not the core of the problem. Can France now be open to looking at other atrocities that are being committed against the people of Anglophone in that other part of Cameroon? And also we saw the former U.S. ambassador and Assistant Secretary of State in charge of African Affairs, Herman Cohen, who is now appealing to the International Criminal Court to investigate the Biya regime for crimes against humanity committed in the crisis-hit English-speaking regions. Now, the U.S. diplomat took to his Twitter account to make the appeal on Wednesday. And following the killing of civilians, including women and children in Gabu, a village in Du subdivision and Donga Mantung division of the Northwest region, that is the Anglophone region. So this is something that has been met with a lot of criticism. Remember what happened last Friday, on the 14th of February, where the rest of the world was celebrating Valentine's Day. Befell some Anglophones there, and these deaths were caused by Cameroonian army. Killed a lot of children, killed a lot of women, and it has been called as a massacre. And we've seen a lot of people coming out and criticizing this and calling on some investigations to be done. We saw UN General Secretary there, Mr. Guterres, coming out and saying this is something that should be investigated. There should be an independent investigator to look at what really happened in this matter. So this is something that has attracted the world. So will this change the things and how things are done in Cameroon there? Will this now bring to the fore the conversation that is long overdue about the suffering of the people in the Anglophone region there in Cameroon? Will this make a change? Will this perhaps make Paul Biya to become more attentive to the cries of the people of Anglophone? Will he open his eyes and see the carnage that is happening, the bloodletting that is happening there from the Anglophone region? I don't know. Maybe the president of French, Mr. Emmanuel Macron, perhaps needs to put more pressure there. But as I mentioned there, this is a matter that France has always chosen to tread in very, very, very carefully. And so we may never see the end of this war. And of course, Ambazonians there continue to fight for a referendum because they want their own country and they want to determine self-determination. They want to have their own country and they want to have their own way of life. And President Paul Biya, who celebrated his 87th birthday just a few weeks ago, is not seeming to let go, and tough times are ahead there. Even for the Francophone part of Cameroon, it's not doing very well. And so I don't understand how they're comfortable having this president who's been there for the longest time. He's the second longest serving head of state there after, Equatorial Guinea's president and then President Paul Biya. And so I don't know when the Francophone Cameroonians will come out and say, enough is enough. We also need a change of leadership here in Cameroon and we want to be at par with the rest of the world, because it's not doing any good for Cameroon as a whole, even without even mentioning the problems that have befell Anglophone. He's no good. He's no good to that country at all. So I don't know when the Francophone people, will come out and say, you know what, we've had it. Perhaps we need a new leadership. Perhaps we need a new change of guard here, because Mr. Paul Biya is not good for that country. And of course, this matter in for Ambazonians is something also that we talk about here so much. And I'm just hoping that one day this is a matter that the African Union will take up, and perhaps will start looking at this matter. And what really surprised me, even as the United Nations came out and, castigated the killings of the innocent people there in the Anglophone region, and the EU came out, and the US has come out, and now we see the US is saying now this matter should be taken to the International Criminal Court, because this is the highest crimes against humanity. And he's saying that investigations should be done against Paul Biya's regime, and he's asking for that because this is, crimes against humanity that were committed, and innocent people died, and it is the Cameroon army who killed these people. And what really astounded me, just a few days after that, about 2 days after that, the government came out and said, you know what happened there was just an accident. So it was just a small hiccup there. It was just an accident. It's not just such a big deal. Are they not aware how many lives were lost? One life is already too much to be lost in such a way that is not right. And so you can tell by that attitude that Mr. Paul Biya's government is not really concerned in finding a solution for the Anglophones, in finding a solution for the crisis that has really engulfed that region. So it's very sad, and it's a very sad state of affairs. So I'm not sure if this really will propel perhaps some more changes. And as I was saying earlier there, I saw the EU coming out and condemning the killings. I saw the United Nations coming out and condemning these kills, and now we see a former US ambassador and assistant secretary of state in charge of African affairs coming out and saying these matters should be referred to the International Criminal Court because it meets the threshold of crimes against humanity. But the person that I did not see, or the organization that I did not see, which should have been the first to condemn this, is the African Union. I did not see the African Union address this matter. I did not see the African Union bring this to the attention of the world. I did not see the African Union condemn the killings that happened in the Anglophone region. And so this just brings us to the question of that we keep asking here. Is the African Union even serving the interest of Africa? Who is the African Union working for? And why is it that they're very silent when it comes to certain things that happen in this continent that they should be the people addressing? I don't understand. And so this is something that I think we shall continue talking about, and we shall continue, just highlighting so that the world can see what is really happening indeed in Africa, together with other crises that has hit this continent. So right now, of course, the other topic we had for you is Uganda, Rwanda, where the ink dry on the agreements. And we saw President Paul Kagame of Rwanda and his Ugandan counterpart, Yoweri Museveni, sign an extradition treaty as the two countries move to end tensions that have paralyzed movement of people and goods across their common borders. Now, the signing on Friday was witnessed by President João Lourenço of Angola and President Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The treaty will act as a framework to handle cases of injustice, including those related to alleged subversion activities by nationals of both countries in the territory of the other party, according to a communique released after the private talks at the third quadripartite summit held at the Gatuna border. So, Uganda and Rwanda have been engaging in, first it seems like a Cold War, and then it escalated some times back last year, I think a year ago, where Rwanda decided to close the borders between it and Uganda. And so not just the two countries suffered, but also other nationalities that use especially this route to trade or perhaps travel these two countries. It has not been very easy, and this really has gone to even threaten the unity of the East African community. And so it has not been very good there. And we've seen especially President of Paul Kagame take very hardline position there. And so after a few meetings that were chaired by Angolan President João Lourenço there to try to mediate and bring these two countries together and perhaps solve their problems, because Rwanda is accusing Uganda of hosting some rebels who are planning to oust President Paul Kagame. And, Uganda is also accusing Rwanda of bringing in spies into Uganda. And so it has been a back and forth intelligence matter. And so last year we saw Uganda expel one of the MTN, the international telecommunications company that is based in Uganda. Of course, its mother country is from South Africa. So we saw Uganda deport an executive there of the MTN because she was a Rwandese, and also deport another executive that I think was French also. So it has affected even some businesses between these two countries, and so these simmering tensions have done nothing but continue to affect the people who depend and who cannot move really freely in and out of Uganda or Rwanda. So Rwandese, it has been very difficult for them to visit Uganda, same as Ugandans when they visit Rwanda. And these are people who share a border, and so you wonder. So on Friday they met at the border between that was closed between these two countries. And Uganda also agreed now within 1 month to verify the allegations of Rwanda about activities in its territory by forces hostile to Rwanda. And I'll just read a part of the communique that was, released to the public. And it said that the heads of state noted that since their last meeting, progress was registered regarding the commitment of the two parties to do everything they can to eliminate the tension factors. And in this regard, the release of prisoners from both sides and guarantee to continue this process in absence of the rule of law and in observance of the rule of law, not in absence. They need to observe the rule of law. And if these allegations are proved, Uganda will take all measures to stop it and prevent it from happening again. This action must be verified and confirmed by the ad hoc ministerial commission for the implementation of the Memorandum of Understanding of Luanda. Now, the two leaders agree that once this recommendation is fulfilled and reported to the heads of state, the facilitators will convene within 15 days at Katuna, that is the border, for the sole or reopening of the borders and subsequent normalization of the relations between the two countries. I think that is long overdue. When you're worrying with your neighbor, I mean, it's not the easiest thing. When you're fighting with somebody who is from a distance, it's perhaps you can contain. But when you're fighting with your neighbor, who you rely on in so many things, and you need them as much as they need you, then it changes everything. Bama Orlando saying, after listening to President Macron, it looks like France has finally made up her mind to bring about political change in Cameroon. Prayers, amen. You're saying once. Is the sadness. And Anyim Judith, you're saying the suffering people of southern Cameroons are crying out for help from the rest of the world. And Elvis and so Young, you're saying the Cameroonian government also pays some Amazonians to sabotage the leaders in jail. Okay, I did not know that. So thank you so much. Ogebe Omoto-chan, good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for watching Nyaleo Dak Duop. You're saying we can only unite after justice. Good afternoon to you too, and thank you so much. Dominic Nond, you're saying, so South Sudan is now a divide and is known as divide and rule. This is a bad lead. I don't know what you meant there. Joseph Otto Manasi, you're saying they have now realized that one cannot keep on trusting some people in his house when you know the solution. Why it took that long to over-negotiate the number of states when President Salva Kiir knew the solution has not got in my thought. It was just a matter of decreeing and reverting to 10 states, just like decreeing to the 32 states. By this time around, they would have unified army as well. All right, thank you so much for your thoughts there. And Emily Moses, you're saying, I don't know, you are all right, I think I've missed that. But thank you so much, Ogebe. You're saying that's good news for Uganda and Rwanda as well as Eastern African region. Congratulations, yes, because these tensions, the simmering tensions between Uganda and Rwanda was really affecting the smooth running of the East African community, as a whole. And even as we speak right now, President Yoweri Museveni is facing another challenge there. The East African Court of Justice, which has declined to stop a case challenging the constitutionality of changes in Uganda's presidential term limit and age. This is a fresh blow to President Museveni, who is bidding to remain in power when the country goes to the polls in 2021. It's very interesting there. And that is some news. I don't want to discuss that today. We shall discuss that tomorrow in much detail. But today I just wanted us to look at, we looked at Kenya at the beginning of the show. The legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta, and of course the BBI, the latest, and this process has been hijacked by the politicians in this country. And when you hear the things they say there, oh boy, you think it's very disturbing. So I'm just hoping that sanity will return, and this very noble process that was meant to perhaps deliver change that some Kenyans were viewing as a vehicle to a more cohesive and a peaceful country might be not taking us to the right direction, should it be left to the politicians and their politicking here, because clearly they don't mean well to this country. But thank you so much. And also we looked at South Sudan. At least the signs of peace are here. And Dr. Riek Machar yesterday took oath of office again as the first vice president of South Sudan. And there are four now, but I was told they're looking. As I was watching the news, the fifth one is yet to be to take the oath of office. Please explain to me, the people of South Sudan who are watching me here, and I can see a good number of you, why does the country need 5 vice presidents? Why does the country need, why does the country need, how many members of parliament do you have? About 550. Let me first confirm that. About 550. And then how many? Yes. So 10, the revitalized peace agreement allows the signatories to share 35 ministries based on percentages. 10 deputy ministers, and 550 members of parliament during the transition period, and 5 deputy presidents. Can you tell me why a country that is even struggling to pay its own civil servants, a country that is, I know Kenya currently, we have the obsession with the positions, as we see during this BBI rallies. What really has taken center stage now is we propose that the BBI creates this level of position, creates this and that. They just, creation of positions. So our leaders are a bit obsessed with that right now. But I want to understand, South Sudanese, why? What is wrong with just having one vice president? I know, like in the name of uniting the country and to bring the country together and for a cohesive, South Sudan, perhaps. But is that the way of solving the problems of South Sudan? Is that the way to achieve a united South Sudan? 550 members of parliament. Even Kenya, we have like 290. And for me, I feel there are too many. I hear some people saying, we need an increase in other constituencies. I say, no, that's one too many of them. We don't want any more. You have 550 members of parliament who the government is really, really struggling to pay. I don't understand. And now the fifth, vice president is yet to be sworn in. South Sudan's, problems just, I think perhaps with time, and the country just normalizes and the structures become strong and the institutions are strengthened. Perhaps you might want to relook some of these things that only burden the people and the economy of South Sudan, which is not doing very well anyway. Bama Orlando is saying France seems to be fed up with political elites of Cameroon, just as the United States and IGAD got fed up with the elites of South Sudan. This can only be good news for Cameroon and South Cameroon. Alrighty then. Okay, so thank you so much. So I'm hoping to see you here tomorrow. 11 a.m. for, our Monday edition of Good Morning Africa. I saw a lot has been happening over the weekend across Africa, so we shall have a lot to talk about and to look forward to. Thank you so much for engaging with me. Thank you so much for your company, and hopefully we can meet here tomorrow. For now, my name is Miriam Mukutu, and it is bye-bye.